Hello, everyone out there in radio land. Y'all are listening to Media Cyphers only on 89.1 WIDR or online at widerfm.org. As always, the following thoughts, views, and opinions are not necessarily those of 89.1 WIDR or Western Michigan University, no matter how dope or insightful they may turn out to be. I'm your host, Andy Argo, and for the next 2 hours, we're going to be talking about what is going on here in the city of Kalamazoo, the state of Michigan, the so called United States, and the rest of the world from a working class perspective. Well, again, there's a lot of things we're going to be talking about on the show today, and of course, we want to start off the breaking news this morning. Legendary civil rights icon, activist, organizer Jesse Jackson passed away early this morning. We're going to be spending some more time kind of talking about that more at length later on in the program. We're going to start as we usually do with some local stories, but of course, we wanted to acknowledge that right off the bat. Um, and again, we'll save our more complete thoughts on Jesse Jackson and his legacy later on. I'm not sure. I might be joined by my co-host later. I hope so, because this is it's a big news, and I really like to get their perspective on it. But for now, let's go ahead. We're going to start off with some statewide news, and there's a couple of stories that I really wanted to hit on going into the program. And I wanted to talk first some updates about Michigan and ICE. And there's these two articles that I think really touch on Michigan's relationship to ICE in from two different but very important angles. And one is kind of the side coming from organized labor. The other is a really good article from M Live, kind of talking about the financial interests behind ICE's, especially their most recent push under the Trump administration to really ramp up incarceration of undocumented folks. But we're going to start with this kind of more hopeful story before we get into the guts of how the fascist sausage is made. This is an article from Michigan Advance, and it's a bit of good news. It's a bit of good news about solidarity here in the state of Michigan. It's written by Ben Solis, published yesterday, February 16th. Powerful Union Federation says hell no to ICE ramping up presence in Michigan. Latest data also shows the ICE detention center in Baldwin is running at high capacity in 2026. As federal officials announce that they will pull back ICE activity in Minnesota, some remain skeptical about what that might look like and if the drawdown is a sign that ICE activity could surge elsewhere, like here in Michigan. PBS News on Sunday reported that White House border czar Tom Homan said at least 1,000 ICE agents are now out of Minneapolis, Minnesota area, but a small security force would remain as a means to respond when agents need assistance with what he referred to as quote unquote agitators or protesters surrounding them, while a smaller group of agents continues their work. I want to just stop there really quick and kind of thread the needle of the sort of propaganda that's going on there. So that's Tom Homan saying like we need a security force to remain so that we can do ICE operations. It's basically painting the citizens of Minneapolis as some sort of external force that needs to be either put down or combated. I mean, Tom Homan a few weeks ago referred to Minneapolis as an operating theater, which you're familiar. That's war terminology. That's not the sort of terminology you're supposed to use, ostensibly for what is a law enforcement operation. Um, and also this idea of agitators. Or protesters, which I think there's again kind of a fundamental misunderstanding, or well, maybe really kind of deliberate misunderstanding in the media of what the uprising in Minneapolis has really constituted. It's not. It's not. There have been some high-profile protests. There was, of course, the big general strike day. But for the most part, what resistance to ISIS looked like has been kind of rapid response networks, neighbors protecting one another, showing up in numbers to, document ICE, make sure they're not doing anything illegal, try to defend their neighbors from being kidnapped, that sort of thing. And again, agitators. It basically is trying to twist reality around that. It is actually the people who live there who are the problem, who are agitating the situation, not the ICE personnel who, from everything we have seen in LA, Chicago, Minneapolis, are deliberately escalating just about every situation we have seen. They will. The day that Renee Nicole Good was shot, they also fired tear gas into a high school or near a high school. So, this is not an agency that understands or really is very interested in restraint. And Tom Hammond is trying to do that spin, which the media is all too happy to kind of be a stenographer for, even though that does not really match up with what is actually going on the ground. Moving on in this article, the seeds of a potential ICE ramp up in the Great Lakes state took shape last week as multiple new ICE-related facilities, from detention centers to legal outposts, were reported cropping up in southeast Michigan. On Monday, the Michigan AFL-CIO, a federation of union organizations with a powerful sway in union-heavy Michigan, said they were standing with their brothers and sisters in the labor movement opposing ICE in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and called for the complete withdrawal of the agency from the Twin Cities. The presence of ICE in Minnesota is a threat to all Americans and our sacred rights. Michigan's labor movement calls for the completion of the planned withdrawal of ICE in Minnesota, accountability for the actions of ICE to the fullest extent permitted by law, and the rescinding of ICE's massive deportation funding, said Ron Bieber, president of the Michigan AFL-CIO, in a statement. ICE is not about safety. It is about intimidation, control, and extremism. The working class must stand united against attempts to intimidate us. Bieber also had choice words for the administration of President Donald Trump and Hammond as ICE plans to fan out after a disastrous turn in the Minneapolis area that included the shooting deaths of two U.S. citizens. To Trump's plans to have ICE set up its shop in Michigan, we say hell no. Get out and stay out, Bieber said. I just want to respond to a couple points there. So I think, it is really worth saying that, just a few years ago, the AFL-CIO would not have gotten directly involved in what they might have seen as like a quote unquote political issue, although, as you know, especially there was this great, I believe, it was an interview with Truth Out, or maybe it was The Dig. I will find which one and get back to you. But it was talking about, they were interviewing a labor organizer on the ground in Minneapolis, and for their particular union, and this is like unionized, I think drivers, etc. Um, they mentioned that their workers were the ones being stopped. They had a lot of immigrant workers in their union. So this wasn't like a culture war issue to them. This was something directly impacting their workforce. I think you could probably say something to a similar extent about the AFL-CIO. But, we've talked a lot on the program about the historical de-radicalization of labor going back to, the 1920s and 30s and 40s. But it does definitely seem to me, and the AFL-CIO was kind of one of the first ones to really be de-radicalized like that. We are really starting to see even these mainstream labor unions and labor organizations really come out to bat, and make the threat clear too. The idea that like this isn't just like we're suggesting the working class must stand united. This is really exciting. We haven't really seen big unions talk this way in a very, very long time. And as we talked about a few weeks ago on the program, the one-day general strike in Minneapolis was something of a proof of concept. And I think, especially if you have some of these really big labor unions on board with the idea that the government is going too far with what ICE is doing, that it makes it all the more possible that labor may be able to exercise its leverage at some point to curb some of this administration's more authoritarian tendencies. Going on in the article again, although there have been rumblings of new detention centers opening in Michigan, the state is home to one of the largest such detention centers in the Midwest, the Federal North Lake Correctional Facility in Baldwin, which had been shuttered for years before the Trump administration reopened the facility as an ICE-specific detention center. And actually, we're going to be talking a bit more about that in the other article that from MLive that we're going to be talking about. ICE data collected by relevant research and presented by detentionreports.com shows that the agency was reporting a slight decline in the total detained population nationwide, which Austin Kocher, a Newhouse School professor at Syracuse University, attributed to a combination of legal challenges and a simple fluctuation in reporting. That said, some ICE facilities were seeing spiking activity or running at a continued high capacity into the new year. The latest ICE data shows North Lake was in the latter category. As of February 5th, the facility is reported holding 1,467 people and has expanded at a high rate since it reopened in the middle of 2025. The facility had fewer than 100 people detained shortly after July 2025, but ballooned to an average daily population under 800 detainees by September of 2025. The average daily population figure reduced significantly to a flat 300 detainees per day between October and November, but grew exponentially again through the end of the year. By the end of last November, the average daily population had risen to nearly 1,600 detainees. That figure dipped slightly into the new year, but remained relatively flat at around 1,500. The average length of stay at North Lake is around 45 days and holds a criminal detainee population of 150 people, meaning the vast majority of immigrant detainees at the facility are listed in the non-criminal category. Again, I mean, you'll hear this even from liberal outlets. Again, what Trump, and ICE and Kristi Noem was like, we're going after the worst of the worst. Stephen Miller is a little bit more honest. He's like, we have quotas, and obviously not all of them are going to be the type of like criminals you see in 80s action movies. Some of them are going to be landscapers and construction workers and maids and other non-white people, let's be frank, just trying to go about their business. So anyway, you can find that article. That's from Michigan Advance. It's written by Ben Solis. Headline is Powerful Union Federation says hell no to ICE ramping up presence in Michigan. And with that, let's go. I'm going to go right over to this article from MLive, which is about speaking a little bit more about the facility in Baldwin and the financial interests behind it. This was published a little bit closer to about 5 days ago, about February 12th. Owner of Michigan ICE Detention Center reported $254 million profit last year. This is written by Rose White. A private prison company that operates the largest immigration detention center in Michigan saw its profits climb even as stocks tumbled under President Donald Trump's effort to detain and deport millions of immigrants. GEO Group, which if you are a longtime listener of the show, that's one of our that's one of the names that's in our rogues gallery. We've spoken a lot about GEO Group, particularly in the context of mass incarceration. But under Trump 1, even a bit under Biden, and certainly under Trump 2, we are seeing GEO Group really ramp up its operations in the context of detaining immigrants. This GEO Group reported $254 million in profits, up from nearly $32 million in 2024. Well, there are the AI bubble might be bursting, but I guess if you own any stocks in concentration camps, you're gonna be doing just fine. Anyway, after it secured new federal contracts and opened 4 new U.S. ICE facilities throughout the country, the company stock prices did slump by roughly 13% on Thursday, February 12th, as it fell short of forecasts and its leadership changed. And really listen going forward because they will explain why, and it's a rather dystopian reason why some of their stocks have been tumbling. Despite the mixed financial picture, GEO Group CEO George Zoli told investors during a Thursday call that its new contracts could bring in $520 million a year, marking the largest amount of new business we have won in a single year. GEO Group expected a windfall last year under the Trump administration's effort to rapidly expand detention space. The for profit firm, which had already been a key partner for the federal government, landed contracts to transport detainees, monitor immigrants, and reopen shuttered prisons as ICE detention centers throughout the country. Again, this GEO Group, they are the corporation literally making money off of the building of these 21st century concentration camps all in the country. We were talking a little bit about this at the end of last week's show, but yeah, they are one of the big financial players, and I forget if they actually mentioned this in the article, but I did want to go back to why were those stock forecasts off, or they're not as bright as they predicted. It's because the Trump administration has not been able to detain as many people as the GEO Group stockholders hoped. Just to make the line that, like, again, fascism is where capitalism goes when it's desperate. It is where capitalism goes when it is fearful of social democracy or socialism or communism. So it ramps up the oppression. And this is what happened in Nazi Germany. This is what happened in Italy. This is what is happening now. And make no mistake, it is that profit motive that is working hand in glove with kind of the innate like nativism and racism in the administration to try and make this dystopia a reality. And again, I think a lot of people try to pick apart. It's like, oh, they're doing it because they're capitalists. They're doing it because they're racist. Well, there are racist capitalists. It's I saw a joke recently online. It's like, oh, America, the three branches of government. We've got pedophiles, billionaires, and racists. Those are the three branches. Um, so anyway, if you go on in the article, we're talking more about, and I think my co-host is about to join us. But we're talking GEO Group. Also notably donated about $1 million to Trump's campaign. Again, that pay to play aspect of American politics exhibited through GEO Group's what's the word zeal to make money off of these concentration camps. Um, and as we also have talked about, Trump administration is also looking to convert warehouses around the country into detention centers between 5,000 and 10,000 people. GEO Group wants to be involved on the ground floor on that. That important investment. And then I want to point out too, they do a good job in this article pointing out kind of the problematic aspect of all of this. Concerns have grown over overcrowding, medical neglect, and dire conditions at immigration facilities. 32 people died in ICE custody last year, marking a two-decade high that's prompted lawmakers to press for more oversight. GEO Group has also previously been sued over inadequate medical care, wrongful deaths, and forced labor by paying detainees $1 a day to participate in a work program. Many are also facing prolonged detention under a new policy that denies bond to a broader swath of immigrants. Thousands have since sued the federal government seeking release on bond, with many winning their cases. Anyway, my hat's off to Rose White. You don't see a lot of that kind of really reporting that digs into the financial aspect of these issues. Rose White is doing some good work with MLive. Headline that is owner of Michigan ICE Detention Center reported $254 million profit last year. Well, folks, I'm joined by my co-host Lawrence. Lawrence, I think we're going to take a quick little break, just kind of get our docket in order, and then we will come back. Everybody, y'all are listening to Cyphers only on 89.1 WIDR or online at widerfm.org. You can also find us online at Media Cyphers on Facebook, YouTube, and the Media Cyphers Kalamazoo podcast you can find on most podcasting apps. Keep it locked. Y'all listening to Media Cyphers, your source for political revolution. All right, everybody, we are back. Y'all are listening to Media Cyphers only on 89.1 WIDR or online at widerfm.org. Org. Back with my co-host Lawrence. We are going to, I think we're going to start just talking about, as I mentioned at the top of the show, civil rights icon, activist, organizer Jesse Jackson passed away this morning. He was 84. He, blessedly surrounded by family. Um, and the family put out a statement, something to the effect of, if you want to honor Jesse Jackson's memory, fight for those issues and those values that he spent his lifetime fighting for. Um, anyway, we got a lot to say on this, but Lawrence, what are some of your initial thoughts? I don't know, when you heard the news and kind of thinking through. Again, we wouldn't be doing this show without Jesse Jackson. I can explain more about that in a bit, but um,
Yeah.
kind of hand it to you,
Um,
Lawrence.
yeah, man, like I'm not gonna lie, I'm hurting right now. I'm not gonna lie and say uh I'm not feeling some type of way. Um I'm sad. Like this is a when we talk about uh significant political leaders that helped shape this country for the better, people who help expand the circle of liberty, right? Who fought for the least of us. This was a reverend, right? And uh, I know that some people who listen to this program that may not believe in any faith, but the ideas of the Christ when of Jesus by saying um, if you don't do it for the least of me, then you're not doing it of me. And a lot of his policies were always catered towards disenfranchised folks, right? So fighting for healthcare, uh, fighting for better pay for workers, being a part of the civil rights movement, fighting for free education. He this is a man who ran for president twice, right? This is a black man who ran for president twice, and the idea of his coalition, the Rainbow Coalition, right? Of taking the ideas of the black that similar ideology that the Black Panthers talked about, getting working class people, uh, no matter your race, sex, creed, country of origin, or things of that nature, to fight against those that are keeping us uh, oppressed, fighting against the system of oppression that we live in, right? Um, and he at best of times, at best of times, he was just as radical as Martin. He was just as radical as X or any of the other civil rights leaders of that era. Um, we can get into his legacy later in life. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, like his legacy is fighting for those who are fighting for the disenfranchised people of America and around the world, and is the legacy that we should be upholding.
Yeah, I want to echo a few things there and maybe dive a little bit in. So, especially I think for some of our younger listeners, the Rainbow Coalition campaigns were really important. I, we often hear, especially liberal politicians these days, talk in terms about of like, celebrating our diversity and bringing everyone in. And Jesse Jackson was really the first person who campaigned on that, and it's obviously more sincerely than a lot of them. I'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
But he understood innately that the only way to kind of reconstitute a progressive coalition, during the Reagan years, this was like these were the peak years of like the Reagan counter revolution. would be to build this broad, like, interracial coalition that also included, men and women and gay folks and trans folks and all of this other stuff, which was really forward thinking for the 1980s, of course. I'd also say, like, the
In 90.
Rainbow Coalition campaign, without that, which he did not secure the nomination, which I don't know. It's funny if you look back at I can't remember, it was the '84 election, I believe. Um, Maybe they should have went with Jesse Jackson, because if you look back, like, they got absolutely walloped, gobsmacked. It was the Democratic Party's tendency to just like, oh, we can't run somebody who's exciting with exciting ideas. We got to run like a centrist. That'll beat Ronald Reagan, right? And then Walter Mondale went on to win Minnesota, and that was it. It was like one of the worst electoral whoopings in American history.
Yeah.
But
Funny. It's funny when you look at the parallels of that election, and it echoes a lot of the Bernie Sanders campaign of 2016 and 2020. Like a lot of the progressive wave that came after Jesse Jackson, even Dean Cain saying I'm from the at the time when he was like I'm from the Democratic wing of the Democratic Party, that aggressive progressive populist ideology uh laid a lot of the groundwork for the framing of these issues that Bernie and AOC and others now use. And it was people, and it was people like Jesse Jackson. It was people like Shirley Chisholm before him, right? That that were doing these things when they were not popular, and they were doing these things as black people in America, where black people are still fighting to be looked at as human. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Or to be fully realized, or to be accepted in places of power, where in challenging uh conventional frameworks, a lot of the things that we now, people who are progressives, the people who are socialists, even people who are Marxists and communists, things of that nature, that are in the political zeitgeist now, the foundation of where we are now were laid there because of people like Reverend Jesse Jackson. And
absolutely. Yeah. I think he really lent, he was a living example of that. There's this metaphor in organizing. It's like you have to plant seeds, and sometimes those seeds will take a while to grow. And that was true. Civil rights movement planted so many seeds about trying to get get more power for these multiracial coalitions, and try to beat back the vestiges of it was really like the vestiges of, like, the slave system, and from there, that made possible things like, the Black Panther Party. That made possible the Rainbow Coalition. The Rainbow Coalition, even though we had 16 years of, and I often joke like this, I think every president since Reagan has basically just been three Ronald Reagans in a trench coat. But we had like 16 years of uncontested neoliberalism, under Clinton and Bush. But during that time, you had the WTO protests in the late '90s. You had Occupy Wall Street, and then kind of this culmination on the electoral stage of the Bernie Sanders movement, which, like, Bernie Sanders himself has said would not have happened without that groundwork, those seeds planted by Jesse Jackson. Which in turn, as I kind of said at the top of this, we wouldn't be doing the show without it, because I think 2016, that was for like us millennials and a lot of younger people, and maybe a few older people too, that was really our political awakening. A lot of us would not be doing this, or wouldn't have not have studied socialism or got into organizing, if it hadn't been for that campaign, which again looked at what Jesse Jackson did, made some tweaks to it, pushed that forward, and it's not too shabby. Two times we almost had a Democratic Socialist president or a Social Democrat president, whatever you want to say, which again is miles away from where that movement was 20, 30, 40 years ago. I'd also say, just as a kind of a side note, um, there were even aspects of like Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Coalition that they were better on certain issues than Bernie Sanders was in 2016 or even 2020. I think particularly the Jesse Jackson had a better understanding of U.S. imperialism. He was always a lot more outspoken on that during the Bush wars, the Bush years in particular. He was very vocal, and even going into the Obama years, talking about stuff like Libya, about the disgrace of how so much of our money was spent terrorizing other nations around the world, while we did not have adequate education, we did not have free health care, so on and so on and so on. Whereas, you remember the Bernie Sanders campaign, he said like drones are bad, but there wasn't really a very well fleshed out foreign policy platform. But what I was trying to go with that is, I think through, you know, through that connection you draw to Jesse Jackson, who again draws his own connection to MLK, who he was beside during the civil rights movement. And as Jesse Jackson always pointed out, the powers that be, when they really started having trouble with MLK when he started speaking out against Vietnam, and in earnestness and in radical honesty, Jesse Jackson moved forward with that truth in a way that even a lot of politicians since then really have not been able to do. There's still primarily this bipartisan consensus around foreign policy that you even see among some progressives. So he was really forward thinking about that, and pushed the culture leftward in a lot of ways. I think he does not get the proper credit for.
Absolutely. I mean, I echo those sentiments. Um, we cannot be afraid of being radical. We cannot be afraid of doing the of speaking up, even we may not feel that it's the most popular thing to do at the time, right? Politics is not about uh fighting for a thing, fighting for the right thing because it's popular. It's making things that are right, that may not be popular, right? Because at a particular time, at the particular time in our history, you know, we're fighting for the humanity of undocumented people in this country. We're fighting for the humanity for people to identify as they are, as their true selves, right? We're fighting for we're fighting back against corporate capture of our politics in media and across in a myriad of fields. Um, we're fighting back against genocide and wealth extraction and mineral extraction from the global south and from other countries, and the outright corruption and degradation of our own system. These are things that Reverend Jackson and others also saw. They also saw these things and saw the pipelines of these things, and they chose to be bold. And they chose to be bold at a time where they didn't have the internet. They did not have the internet.
No. Mm-mm.
So if they could be bold and have this connection, these universal connections to fight for disenfranchised people, not just in America but across the globe, and seeing how colonization and capitalism and all these things are affecting all of us, then we should be able to do the same because we have things like the internet now that that connects us easier.
Yeah,
We
I wanted to mention too, something that I almost forgot to bring up, which is important. Jesse Jackson also a huge advocate for fair representation in media. Have to have media pushing media to represent the constituencies that they serve. And this was at the same time that Bill Clinton, was tearing down the Telecommunications Act of 1996, which removed the Fairness Doctrine, and we've just seen the hyper uh, profitization and partisanization of corporate media since then. But I think something that Jackson might have done really in influenced the whole wave of independent media and outlets that have popped up in its wake. Democracy Now! Is turning 30 this year, which was right around that time when there was again this juncture where there's this demand from people like Jesse Jackson for fairness in media, and the people in charge were like fairness to the shareholders in media. There's also like again, it's the terrain upon which stuff like our show exists, which I think is really worth pointing out. One thing that I was also thinking about was kind of like Jesse Jackson. He had his Rainbow Coalition was very authentic, and something that I think is interesting as we are this today, the sunset being today in Jesse Jackson's life. He lived through a period where a lot of people tried to steal and co-opt those type of politics. The Democrats, I think, recently, they tried to gobble up a lot of the rhetoric. That Jesse Jackson used and redeploy it in the context of neoliberalism. You know, uh, just to make it clear, when Bernie Sanders was able to revive that concept in 2016, you'd seen, especially among the Democratic Party, a lot of co-optation of identity politics. The idea like stick a rainbow flag on the drone. Like people like Pete Buttigieg or Kamala Harris who are trying like the Rainbow Genocide Coalition. Let's really again. And by the way, there's a really great book about this. If you're interested in the whole idea of like co-optation of identity politics, elite capture, how the powerful took over identity politics and everything else, by Olufemi Otaiwo. Read it a few years ago. It's great stuff, but I'm getting into too many rabbit holes here. What I'm meaning to say is, um, I would say that co-optation it it was outlasted by the real radical ideas that Jesse Jackson brought forth in his advocacy in his work, because look at the ascendant, the good political stories that we've had in the last year. We had Democratic Socialist elected in Seattle, of course, Zoran Mamdani, who would have been part of that coalition in the 80s if he wasn't a toddler, of course. Um, but that is kind of that is that shows what the Rainbow Coalition was really about. It's not just about ticking off some diversity boxes. It's about representing the diversity of America and the necessity for policies that lift up everyday working people.
yeah, yeah, man. I mean, like just to give perspective, like talking about why for those who may not understand why media narratives or media diversity is important, just like this, just to add to what you're saying, you have to remember Jesse lived through Emmett Till in real time. You know what I'm saying? He lived through the Yannette Carville Cardell Cloven. I'm messing with her name. The young woman that refused to get off the bus, the 15-year-old, before Rosa Parks. He saw how media shaped those narratives to make those people the villains in those stories. He saw firsthand how media shaped the narratives around the freedom riders, how they were called agitators, right? That disinformation. So he saw in real time as a young person fighting for humanity and freedom for his fellow Americans, and also pushing that forward as he gotten older. It makes sense that pushing back against the fairness doctrine, pushing back against the pushing for equal representation, who are uh so those who are victims are not being murdered twice, as him and others have said, that we can actually have the true story being told, and we're not being lied upon. And there's echoes of those stories still to this day. If we remember what the media or what the president and the right wing said about Renee Good and Alex Preddy, or how the media Tamir Rice and Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown after their death, or George Floyd after theirs, right? The things that in scene, because that's what we do. We're talking with our show. We talk about because we do media criticism, and we analyze media for as a part of our show. He was doing that. He did a lot of that work, and he was and that helps, and it helps shape what we're doing now, man. And it's
Hmm.
crazy to see. It's crazy to see. I would love I love the fact that we are walking in a similar path as one of the greats. You know what I'm saying? I If there's more books, I do want to say, because we have been talking about plugging more books on our show, so like we're starting our book club. If there's more books that's going to be, there's going to be a lot of books talking about Reverend Jesse Jackson's life, and if we can find any good ones, we will definitely put them in the doobly doo below, so that we can all be on the same page. But yeah, that man's amazing, and and I wish that those that were in power around him would have fought for the progressive policies that he talked about, because we would be in a much better place as a country if we did.
Yeah, it is worth noting. It's like, oh gosh, I was getting emotional listening to one of his speeches earlier, but it's like, keep dreaming and keep hope alive. Keep hope alive was like big mantra
Uh,
for him. And I think that's particularly resonates or when with all of the darkness that's going on right now, and this idea that, like, it's hard to see a light at the end of the tunnel. It's worth remembering that these are generational struggles. These things take time, and they take MLK talked about, the arc of history bends towards justice, but a lot of people leave out the part of the quote where it's like, we have to make it bend, we have to bend it. And sometimes there's people, counter revolutionaries trying to bend it backwards the other way around. So I think we can keep hope alive. We can look at where we're at, and we can understand that, like, the future is still up for grabs, even as dark as things look. And we have people like Jesse Jackson who gave us a vision of what that kind of future can look like. It's up to us to make it happen.
yeah,
Yeah. Oh, just also to for those who want, I was listening to it before the show today. I think Democracy Now! Did a really great, spent almost a full hour talking about the legacy of Jesse Jackson. So if you want to hear more about the man, we'll link to that in the show notes as well.
Yeah,
But yeah, thanks for listening to us talk about and again, rest in power, Jesse. And thank you for a lifetime of service to the people. Uh, really.
yeah. Shout out to Democracy Now! They like again, they're out here doing the Lord's work. So like, yes,
Hmm.
like it is every time there has been a person that has helped shape our country for the better. They have always done their due diligence and given them their flowers while they were alive and also when they passed. Definitely check out their episode today.
Hmm. Well, I think with that, we might want to move on to a different story. We were talking about a couple of different ones to do during the break. What did you want to hop on next, Lawrence?
Man, do we want to laugh? Do I know we're talking about something sad? Uh, uh, okay. So quick hit. Let's do something that we were just talking about.
Lighten the mood a bit.
Uh,
All right. Mhm.
yeah. So we are just talking about how the co-opting of progressive language, but uh, choosing to side with power and cater to the establishment, right?
Mhm.
We're just talking about how Democrats will do that, especially Democratic leadership. So the reason why I bring this up because I want to give you a tale of two Democrats, right? You have AOC over in Germany, over in Munich, right, at the conference, and her speech that she gave. You have Hakeem Jeffries going on Joy Reid's show, YouTube show with Wasa Ali. I'm messing up his name. I'm so sorry if you watch this. Mr. Ali, you are awesome. You're one of my favorite journalists. I keep messing up your first name. I'm so sorry. And then you have Marco Rubio, uh, who's also overseas giving speeches. And I want everyone who's listening to me to think about what we were just saying about Jesse Jackson uh fighting for people's rights, human dignity, people's humanity, fighting for uh a coalition of people and and using his platform to expand circle of liberty and hold the powerful accountable, right? I want you to listen to what AOC said. Go watch what Hakeem Jeffries said to Joy Reid and Mr. and Was Ali, and listen to what Marco Rubio said, and think which one of those three would Jesse Jackson's legacy and or ideology is best represented by. There's only one clear answer. so, so the reason why I'm bringing this up as a quick hit, Miss Reed had the leader of the house on for a 10-15 minute interview, and Ali came on. Uh, I think like 5-7 minutes into the interview, and they're asking him about abolishing ICE because it is the moderate position in America. It's not a far left position. Only 33% of the country 3 weeks ago wanted to abolish ICE. Now it's at 65%. Yesterday,
That's a
it's at
hell of a swing, folks. Yeah.
65% in 3 weeks, right? To abolish this organization that's only 23 years old because it was created in 2003. So ICE is younger than Kai Cenat. Okay, the
Ice
streamer.
is younger than some of you folks walking around in front of the studio right now. Well, some of you post grads probably, but yeah.
Ice Ice as an organization is only 2 years older than Ice Show Speed. The YouTube streamer that's been gallivanting around the world and and uh it just turned 21. Okay? Like Ice I think might be the same age as the iPhone. I think they're around the same age, right?
Yeah.
So when he's being asked, "Hey, I this organization is destroying the is destroying them is harming American citizens. Why don't you abolish it?" He he dysfunctions. He gets angry. He avoids the question like it was bullets from the Matrix. You know what I'm saying? Like he knows this thing. You know what I'm saying? It was the most Max Payne thing I've ever seen in my life on how he was dodging these shots. You know what I'm saying? Uh, and then they continue to
the,
say,
the the
brother,
the Gestapo just needs better training, folks. That's just
yeah, they
that's,
do. And it's like you are in that moment, you are proving you are not fighting the allegations that you want to just do nothing and try to win. You're not fighting the allegations of do nothing and try to win. When you are the leader of the house. How are you going to fight back against this organization that's already proven that they will ignore court orders, they will violate people's due process rights, they will violate constitutional rights, and you're just like saying, and you will say we're fighting to we're gonna fight back, but you didn't whip votes to defund DHS.
I want to loop back to something too. I mean, so at the top of the show, we were talking about GEO Group and how they own detention centers around the country here in Michigan. The financial incentive is part of this, and it should be said that it wasn't too long ago that Kamala Harris was running a presidential campaign talking about how she was going to be tougher on immigration than Donald Trump, and how they were not only were they not combating the falsehoods coming from the Trump campaign about immigrants, but they were accepting them as truth and then trying to basically outpace Donald Trump from his right on the issue of immigration. The Democrats, except for, maybe during the campaign in 2020, have been pretty spiritually lost on this issue since the Obama administration, and they've largely just ceded all of that ideological ground to Republicans. Even now, when, as you said, ICE is terminally unpopular among the general voting public, and part of the problem is financial. GEO Group, as we said, donated $1 million to Donald Trump. They donate to both parties. So there is that financial incentive from corporations that are vested in making money off of ICE to keep ICE going as an institution. Also, it's just the idea of some a a party that plays it as centrist and safe as the Democrats, embracing the abolish ICE position. It's why we talk about needing to unseat a lot of these politicians, because there is not the incentive within them to really upturn the apple cart, even when their own base is demanding it. I mean, you also saw a good example of this during the whole Gaza genocide. The vast majority of their base wanted to pump the brakes, stop this madness as quickly as possible, and they didn't do it. They did not do it at all. So it's worth looking at how ICE, which has really become part and parcel of the national security state, is kind of it's melded into that bipartisan consensus we get on foreign policy and the military and all that stuff. So the most radical solution the Democrats in power can imagine is giving them body cameras. Which,
Oh,
if we let's remember, the guy who murdered Renee Nicole Good was filming the whole thing with his own cell phone. Like,
oh, oh, no, it's not just that, family. Uh, recently, Hillary Clinton was just speaking about this. I think it was also overseas, and she was talking about how more people were deported under Joe Biden and under President Obama's administration, uh, basically bragging about how more people were deported under their administration that did not, but citizens didn't get murdered in the street and things of that nature. It was the abundance argument. Hey,
we were incarcerating
yeah,
undocumented people politely, and we weren't making a whole lot of noise about it.
yeah,
That's
it
literally
was,
the argument, isn't it?
yeah, it was. The argument was literally we were doing fascist policy the right way.
Yeah,
Like
yeah. That's it.
we were harming, we
Mm.
were disrupting communities, but when we disrupted communities, it was at night or early in the morning. People really didn't have to see it,
And
right?
keep in mind too, all of the high profile murders that happened in Minneapolis were not committed by, new recruits, from like the J6 insurrection or the Reapers of the Proud Boys, or I mean maybe they're part of those clubs, who knows? But the all of the ICE and Border Patrol people who murdered people, Alex Preddy and Renee Nicole Good, are people who have been on the job through various different administrations. I think the guy who killed Renee Nicole Good went back to the Obama administration, and the officers who killed Alex Preddy served under Trump and Biden. So it's not like this is just an issue of like, oh, they didn't get the right training. This is a structural problem of a police force that has, again, gone rogue. And what the Democrats propose to do is just rein them in a bit, so they're only going rogue against people who don't have their papers.
Yeah,
that's, that's their
it,
platform.
Doc, it was that, yes, and also when they pushed back against uh uh APAC and the Israel lobby, and your colleagues, the colleagues of the Democratic Party, uh taking money from that lobbying group. He was basically he parried he uh he basically used the line of Bernie Sanders saying that my contributions, when it comes to fundraising, my average contribution is $27. Is $27. He he parroted that from Bernie Sanders. So when they said, "Hey, will you stop taking APAC money and stop taking the, money from that lobbying group that has spent money against moderate Democrats, not just progressive Democrats like Cory Bush um and Jamal Bowman, but moderate Democrats they're also spending money against." And he basically said, "No, I'm gonna still raise money the way I've been raising money." So
Yeah.
you're not gonna fight. So you're not gonna fight against ICE, who is terrorizing your citizens. You're not gonna lead on that in any way, shape, or form. Uh, to help your constituents, the American people, and you're letting a organization that wants to create an ethno state, that wants to do ethnic cleansing, and wants to use American taxpayer money to do so, spend money against other Democrats. I would have loved if they had more time during that interview for someone to say, "Hey, uh, speaker, if a organization wanted to spend money in this country to bring back Jim Crow, would you be okay with that? If the answer is no, you're not okay with your colleagues taking money from an organization that wants to bring back Jim Crow, then why are you okay with an organization that wants to do ethnic cleansing with taxpayer money?
Yeah, it's also why we see like so many of these just like regular working people in Minneapolis who like, one of the interesting stories we heard coming out of Minneapolis was just a lot of people who are like, I'm not into politics, got out of the streets in the first time to defend their neighbors. And they, again, people who like, the extent of their politics, like they don't vote, they're just like, I just want to grill, but they recognize what's going on and they are outflanking a political party that is ostensibly supposed to be against this kind of stuff. um but yeah, again, it's just, it's pathetic. It's absolutely pathetic. Even only because it's like, yeah, we expect these centrist politicians to behave this way, but just the absolute lack of moral backbone when we are seeing a fascist state calcify in real time. And again, you give the Gestapo body cameras. It is just the peak. I can see why this happened to the Weimar Republic. It's like now that we're living through it, I'm like, oh man, yeah, yeah. It's like if that was a caliber of politicians they had then too, I was like, man, yeah. It is really no wonder. What
So,
is it?
so
There was, I think it was Goebbels or Goring. He said, he had this famous quote where it's like, you could dismantle a democracy piece by piece, and all the liberals will do is have endless committee meetings until the boots are in the hall.
facts. Yeah, the so I juxtapose that lack that cowardice, right? That the speaker and and milquetoast neoliberals like the speaker, like our other leader that's in the Senate, are very similar to, right? They are they are to echo some sentiments from Reverend Jesse Jackson. It it's not just the outright racist uh that helps maintain fascism and white supremacy. It's also people who placate it. It's
Mm,
also people who um it's also the people like that, like what Speaker Jeffries just did, that that will help it that helps the framing of how we fight back, right? It's the reason why I compare what we're watching to the Harlem Globetrotters. That is the controlled opposition, right? Compare that to what AOC said at uh at the conference, right? She's in Germany saying what Israel's doing to Palestinians is a genocide. First of all, fantastic. We're not playing games, right? It We're going to be open and honest, and we're going to be objective, right? Uh, she talks about how, um, yeah, global hegemony or the established order, it worked for Europe and everybody else because in America, because we were all collectively in unison saying it is okay to exploit Africa and the global South, South America, and other resources for our benefit. And it worked when we all were on the same page saying that we're going to do this. She called that out, right?
hmm
Fantastic leadership. She also says, hey, I've been standing on abolishing ICE since I've gotten into politics, and leaders of my party was telling me that I was being harmful, but I still stand on it. And we're now using, and now the money that we are giving ICE uh, is money that we could have been giving to cities to rebuild their infrastructure. We could have been giving to uh, hungry people in our country. We're not using the resources that we have to protect the American people. It's now actively harming the American people. Fantastic,
Hmm.
fantastic. These are
Yeah,
the
I
things.
will. I will say she's, obviously, we've had criticisms of AOC on the show. The whole Iron Dome thing. Of course, talking about the it really the kind of infamous speech at the Democratic National Convention where it's like working tirelessly for a ceasefire when, as we found out later, that was not really the case. But I will say, especially lately, one thing that I've criticized in the past about them and some of the squad is being really kind of wishy-washy on certain foreign policy issues. Cuba comes to mind, which we're going to be talking about this more in depth in a minute. But I really did like what she had to say about Cuba, which she was very transparent about what the administration wants to do to Cuba, and she basically said it's terrible. The blockade is barbaric, and essentially she made a connection between I'm very fearful that what we allowed to happen in Gaza has kind of provided this sort of like numbing, desensitizing effect where this is just going to be a new norm, and it's going to be uh, permissible to do to Cuba like what happened to Gaza or something like to that effect. I thought that was a really powerful thing to say, and it was very important for somebody in her position to say in particular. Um, so yeah, there's been some speculation she might be running for president, which I cannot wait
Um,
to see how the Democratic Party is going to cheat out of the nomination. I'm sorry. I
no,
shouldn't
no,
be
no, no.
that cynical, but I mean, last time Bernard came really close. It was just the COVID happened, and then
I,
uh, everybody gathered around Brandon. But um,
so, so I've also heard those speculations. Before we get into that, yeah,
one last Jesse Jackson connection. If it is possible that AOC were to win the Democratic nomination, it would also be directly because of Jesse Jackson, because in the 80s he petitioned the Democratic Party to change their delegate rules. Used to be delegates would be appointed in a winner take all fashion, whereas Jesse Jackson successfully petitioned the Democratic Party to assign delegates proportionally. It's also helped Obama become president, but that would also help grassroots progressive. And then that legacy also lived on in the wake of the 2016 Bernie Sanders campaign. They did away with superdelegates. So I know, like, we obviously, the Democratic Party is a capitalist party, and et cetera, et cetera. But it is worth saying that these changes to the infrastructure within the Democratic Party do help more progressive voices get in more prominent positions of power, which at the end of the day, I think is a good thing. We can be we can be cynical about this stuff, but I think it is good to have ideas about hopeful ideas about social democracy out there and being spoken from positions where they can actually be, at least attempts can be made to fulfill them. Sorry, but go ahead, Lawrence. I didn't mean to go on a long tangent there,
I,
but
oh no, no, no. I agree with you. I think that yes, there have been moments um where AOC has, in my opinion, we have criticized her. She's done missteps, but out of all the representatives of people who we talk about stepping up and leading, speaking truth to power, living in that legacy of Reverend Jesse Jackson. No, she's been doing it. She's been doing it. Maybe it's not always looked the way that we wanted it to be, and there are times when we disagree. But I would rather take her 80% of being on the right side of history, you know, or speaking and being factual, what, 80% of the time, compared and actively standing on it, not just saying it, but standing on business, right? Compared to Jeffrey's garbage, and
Mhm.
also there's Marco Rubio garbage. Like this is, I'm not, I'm only bringing up Marco Rubio to give y'all the contrast of, because he's also a person that people have been speculating is also going to run for president in 2028, right?
Yeah,
Well,
I didn't read or hear Rubio's speech, but wasn't it just like kind of like this rah rah rah, um, kind of trying to make an appeal towards Western civilization and that whole shtick.
yes.
Yeah.
The thing that made me so disgusted about his speech, outside of it being one of the most blatant fascist things that I have seen from a leader of this country in a very long time, the reaction to his speech from the other representatives of other countries there, they basically giving him a standing ovation, forgetting the fact that
Mm.
weeks before,
The Europeans are still colonizers. Don't forget that. Even it's
yes,
just
yes,
I know
yes,
Trump's
the,
taking a
the,
lot of attention for being a belligerent and cartoonish, but like
so
yeah,
so the thing that Trump wants to do to Greenland, the other colonizing countries have done to the rest of the world. And
hmm
when Marco Rubio, a person from Cuba, right? A person he's born in Miami, right? But family comes from Cuba, right? Basically gives this speech that's like, hey, we should we should colonize, and we should get together again and do what we did back in the old days. Doing land theft, doing resource theft, colonizing, the brown and black people in the global south for the profits of our organizations, because this is what the good white people of our countries was doing before. That's basically the gist of his speech. And it's it and it made me angry because I'm like, world leaders, y'all were just saying you can't trust America because America is wants to do to the rest of you, do to y'all what y'all have been doing to the rest of the world. And now, since you
yeah.
have Marco Rubio saying, hey guys, forget about Trump, because this is after Trump leaves. We all need to go back to how things were, which is pillaging and stealing of resources from other countries
Let's get
that
that
are
plunder,
system.
boys. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we need to plunder brown and black countries together, you know, like how we used to. That was
hmm
basically the gist of his speech. And I'm like, wow, wow, that's on the nose, and wow, it seems like y'all have learned nothing.
Yeah. One would hope, but yeah, apparently not so much. Actually, I was wondering that might be a good segue to the next story. If are you ready to move on to another story? I guess is
Oh
my
yeah,
question.
yeah. Oh no, no, we have. Oh no, there's a couple different stories that we definitely need to touch on
But
but yes.
I wanted to use that as a segue to talk about again Marco Rubio being from Cuba and one of the that speech. Uh, what really worries me is what kind of permission structure does it give the United States to do what they're doing to Cuba right now? And I wanted to focus on it because mainstream media is not talking about this like at all, and it's a really important story. As I mentioned, AOC was talking about it, but Cuba. Obviously, longtime listeners of the show know Cuba's been under a blockade for decades since the revolution. A very crippling blockade. They don't have straightforward access to a lot of modern technologies and fuel, etc. However, the last month. has been one of the most difficult times for Cuba in its history, or I should say post capitalist Cuba, because the United States, and a lot of people didn't clock this at the time. Yes, the United States wanted that oil from Venezuela, but importantly, especially for Marco Rubio, he is, um, we should mention, Trump doesn't have any ideology in particular. He doesn't really care. He like the whole profit motive was fine for him, but Marco Rubio he is a hard line anti-capitalist ideologue, and it like liberating Cuba from socialism, and I'm using finger quotes for the people listening the audio feed, has been like his life's dream, his big project. And what has happened in the last month because of the kidnapping of Nicolas Maduro, um, Venezuela has relented to some of Washington's key demands. One of those, and this is just gross. They're sending oil to Israel now. Yuck. And the other part of it is they are no longer sending oil to Cuba. And Venezuela was one of Cuba's main sources for oil. Mexico has also completely cut off oil shipments and deliveries. Again, not because ideologically they don't want to. Claudia Sheinbaum is kind of a democratic socialist themselves. It's because of direct threats from the United States. It's like, you better not give these Cubans none of your oil, or else dot dot dot. Um, and there's actually been a lot of movement, kind of international solidarity movement in Mexico, trying to put pressure on the Sheinbaum administration to defy the Trump administration. Um, and again, look, I don't live in Mexico, and I couldn't say I'm an expert on Mexican politics, but one does have to ask, like, precisely how much leverage does the United States have over Mexico? I think some of Trump's flailing around with tariffs has kind of exposed that the United States is maybe not in as strong a position to make those threats as they once were. Anyway, I digress. There is at least like humanitarian aid coming from Mexico, and you can tell that at least ideologically the government does not agree with this, and ostensibly, I don't think the government of Venezuela does either, but they've basically got a gun pointed to their head from the Trump administration. So this has left Cuba in a really dire situation where they are running out of oil. Within weeks, they may run out of oil to power hospitals and other critical infrastructure, which is going to lead to deaths. Hyperinflation has taken hold. Necessary goods and food have become prohibitively expensive for a lot of working class Cubans. Um, I do want to give a shout out to there is the Nuestra America flotilla, which is going to set off. It's going to set sail next month from ports across the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico. The aim of reaching Cuba in March as a challenge to U.S. blockade. This tactic may sound familiar when we were reporting on the Gaza aid flotillas. It was basically they are trying to use that same tactic right here to deliver some of that aid to Cuba. Um, and to go back to what AOC said, like this is really dire because if you game this out, if they are able to do this, if there's not pushback from Mexico or Venezuela or the rest of Latin America or the international community, they could effectively starve Cuba into perhaps not submission, but into weaken. They could very much weaken Cuba. And obviously, Cuba, they are some of the most resilient people on earth. They have dealt with a blockade for decades, and I'm kind of reminded of it's that quote from I know it's kind of cheesy to quote Marvel movies or whatever, but like there's that scene where the villain in the first Iron Man is just like, Tony Stark built this suit in a cave with a box of scrap. Well, Cuba built a socialist state with a box of scraps that U.S. would not let them have any like modern amenities. Not only did that, they built a world-class healthcare system that does diplomatic work around the world, helping other countries in need. And I think that's part of it. It's been a perpetual embarrassment for the United States to have this country that they have deliberately tried to crush underfoot have like a better healthcare system than us, better literacy, education rates, all that stuff. And Marco Rubio in particular, but the Trump administration more broadly, is trying to use its leverage and its willingness to be just this belligerent to deal a very potentially lethal blow to the people of Cuba. I'm sorry, Lawrence, I've been taking up the microphone for a while here. Do you have thoughts on the whole situation?
So yes, two things. Well, yeah, I pretty much agree with what you're saying. And for those who believe that our healthcare system is not as good, or our healthcare system is uh is not as good as Cuba's, I want to remind you there's a movie called Sicko, right? That Michael Moore, documentary, and Michael Moore put out. Uh, and it was talking about how our healthcare system has failed America. So much so that if I remember correctly, during that movie, he takes Americans on a boat ride to Cuba to get health care.
Yeah.
Right? If I and also correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't President Obama one of the few good things that President Obama did, like like President Obama, like you like him, you not like him, but the embargo on Cuba, he lifted the embargo, right?
He didn't fully lift the embargo, but importantly, and I'm glad you brought this up, the Obama administration normalized relations with Cuba and lifted many of the restrictions that had been in place for decades. It was not a full lift of the embargo, but they were working in that direction until Trump came in and basically if to Barack Obama's credit, I think he realized that this animosity was a relic, like a relic of the Cold War, and didn't really make much sense in modern ideological terms. Unfortunately, Trump administration is full of ideologues like Marco Rubio, and just like anti-communist elements who basically hit the accelerator. They reversed a lot of those normalization gains made under Obama, and by the time Joe Biden got back in charge, he was reluctant to return to the Obama administration status quo of his own previous administration, for some pretty like gross political reasons. He didn't want to offend potential voters in Miami. That's really what it boiled down to. They thought they could win over the Cuban diaspora in the next election if they were tough on Cuba or something. And yeah, and again, the blockade and these sanctions caused tremendous amounts of human misery on a people who just want to be left alone and live their lives and strengthen their communities. But because there's some people in this country who still butthurt that their grandparents lost their sugar plantation, that is not to be, at least not for the time being.
Well, yeah, yes, and right. So it uh it it what bothers me most about this whole situation, right, is that we don't have to be antagonistic towards Cuba, or like there's no reason for us to do so, right? There's no strategic reason for us to want to colonize Cuba, except for the except for the except to show that we can. Like like I would like to ask, what is the what is the benefit of us spending money to topple that regime? What is the net? How does harming Cuba's government make our egg prices go down? Make gas for us go down? Make our healthcare more affordable? Right? I would love for a reporter to ask this to Marco Rubio. I would love for a reporter to ask this to those that are in power.
Yeah. How does
How
that
does
make America great? Like,
how, how does that make America great? Because honestly, we're spending more money, time, and energy harming this country, and we don't have to. And we don't have to.
I think it's true. It kind of it's this is what happens when we have a U.S. government that is run by personal grievance. Because, like say what you will about the Bush and Obama administrations, they had like they had foreign policy goals. Some of those goals were morally atrocious, but they were goals. Trump administration, especially the second time, is just this hodgepodge of personal grievances. Stephen Miller has a chip on his shoulder about being an awkward looking white dude, so he's going to try to create a white ethno state through ICE. And you have Trump, who is using the presidency to get revenge on everybody who's made a petty slight against him in his entire life. And then you have Marco Rubio, whose big dream is to crush the Cuban Revolution. And yeah, that's what our tax money is being spent on, folks.
God, God, when you think about this, and like this is a side note. When you think about this, our tax dollars have gone to kidnapping a president of a foreign country, right? Our tax dollars are going to putting boots on the ground in Nigeria right now.
Oh
Like
yeah, a
we,
lot of people don't mention that. That's thank you.
yeah, we are bombing and we are putting troops in Nigeria right now. We have created a federal jobs program to snatch up citizens in this country, undocumented or documented. That's the only job program that we have actually done, federal jobs program that we have actually done. I
Mhm.
remember when AOC was saying the Green New Deal will help provide governmental jobs for Americans,
Yeah.
well-paying jobs for Americans,
No
right?
Green New Deal, just the brown shirt New Deal.
Yeah,
That's what we
yeah. No, we have a federal jobs program for incel losers who want to be neo-Nazi brown shirts.
Yeah.
That's what we have now, right?
Hmm.
In 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 no way, shape, or form has that made our premiums go down, has made our healthcare more affordable, has made housing more affordable, has made our infrastructure better, has made our has helped us fight against diseases. When it comes to the flu and other variants that in the fact that we have measles and other diseases that's now on the rise in the country, right? None of those things has actually helped make America great again, except if you are a a a racist sun dodger, and yes, that's what I call you. You are a racist sun dodger that believes your proximity to fascist power will help keep you and your family safe.
Okay, by the way, this is kind of random, but I this popped in my head. There is this anecdote which it is degrees of verification, but talked about how like again all the Trump administration is run by like these kind of like grievance politics, and apparently there's this anecdote. Stephen Miller, when he was like either high school or college age, he asked out like a Latina classmate, and she rejected him. So some people have speculated maybe that was his version of like being rejected from art school. I could not
Oh wait,
couldn't
wait.
get an eight. No.
So speaking of, this is a side note. This is a completely different side note and things of that nature. Um, this is a quick hit because this is a completely off topic. This is a completely different quick hit, and I just realized this. We talked about the Super Bowl, right? We talked about the Super Bowl
We
halftime
did
show,
talk about the Super Bowl, yes. And
and
and the
we
the,
talked.
the Toilet Bowl USA presentation in contrast, which
Yeah,
five people watched or something like that.
yeah, the separate but equal Super Bowl halftime show during Black History Month. That's the thing that I still can't get over. They did a separate but equal halftime show, and it proved why separate but equal does not work. Like that still makes me laugh to this day.
Yeah,
But the reason why I bring it up is that one of the things when we talk about solidarity with other countries and liberation for other countries, and the reason why I bring it up Bad Bunny because during Bad Bunny's performance, one of the countries that he shouted out, or he shouted out all of the Americas. He shouted out Canada.
that's true. Yeah,
He shouted out all of the countries. He also shouted out Cuba. Like, and that's the thing. We should be working. We should be working in conjunction with other countries uh to make not just our citizens' lives better, but the citizens of other countries better, right?
hmm
If if we are con- if we are constantly and continue in in every conceivable way saying we're acting like Negan from The Walking Dead, like hey, we're just gonna take half your stuff, and if you don't give us half your stuff, we're just gonna harm y'all and take it anyway. That's not how this works. That's not how
yeah,
the world.
and like the whole gunboat diplomacy thing that we've seen from the Trump administration. It's getting one, it's to trying to drag us back to some of the darkest parts of American history, but it's also, for as much as there are still some adults in the room, not good adults, black-hearted adults who, see the world as the U.S. military's playground or whatever. There is a recognition that there's been, especially since 2000, countries that historically were on the right have gone to the left. I mean, we've also seen the reverse of that very recently. A lot of money and a lot of resources have gone into these elections for far right candidates in places like Argentina and is- who, Javier Milei. He's the president of wait, is it Argentina? But
Yeah,
anyway, there was one. I know somebody was just elected president in maybe it was Argentina, where their grandfather was literally one of those like notorious like Nazi escapees that went to settle in Argentina. But a lot of money and a lot of military resources are being spent on trying to make Latin America great again, give everybody a red hat. At a time when you've also seen some of the most successful liberatory movements in modern history in Latin America. Bolivia. A lot of people forgot about Bolivia. Bolivia had a revolution. It had a counter revolution um, where they kicked Morales out, but there was a another revolution just a couple years after that to unseat the counter revolutionaries. The people defended their republic as it were, and then you have somewhere like Brazil, which there wasn't a full scale revolution, but Bolsonaro was he lost the election to the current like more kind of democratic socialist president, and then of course Claudia Sheinbaum's success story in Mexico is a big one. So for especially for people in the administration who see Latin America through this kind of political colonial lens, it has been very troubling to them to see. Colombia is a great example too, which was historically right wing for a very long time until the recent left wing president was elected. So there's this. I think there's this tangible fear that Latin America is moving leftward. They're openly dealing with China, so a lot of this is the U.S. empire's attempt to try to stop that. A lot of what's going on with Cuba is an example of that. We've got to like this. We've got to do something about the 70-year embarrassment that could like give other countries in Latin America the wrong idea. Um,
Yeah.
and unfortunately for that, the whole idea of might makes right is working to an extent. They're pressuring countries that are otherwise unsympathetic to fascism, like Mexico and Venezuela, to starve out Cuba. But I mean, nothing lasts forever, and all that is going to do is build up more and more resentment among rank and file working people in those countries. And I mean, there's a reason they didn't put boots on the ground in Venezuela, even though people like Marco Rubio wanted that to happen. And the reason is those people and the people of Latin America are ready to defend their revolutionary gains. And Quagmire wouldn't even begin to describe the type of situation we would have on our hands if we did just try to like forcibly invade some of these countries. A circumstance that I don't think back in the 1900s, they might not have been in a position to defend themselves quite as adequately against American colonialism, but I think now very much are, which is why even in Venezuela we had this nab and grab operation versus something more prolonged.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I don't have much to add to that. I agree.
All right. Well, we've still got a few more minutes on the show here. Lawrence, was there anything else you really wanted to hit on while
Man.
we're together on the show?
So, there's a few. There's a few. Um, I want to give a quick shout out to everybody in the Twin Cities and in Wisconsin, Minneapolis, right? Uh, because we were being told that uh ICE is leaving the city, right? I don't actually believe it. I don't, folks don't believe it until they are actually gone. Until they are actually gone, do not believe it. But keep doing the things that you're doing, which is following them, being a legal observer, uh, going to having a celebration late at night at the hotels that they're at. Um, uh, if you are a hotel owner, or if you are an establishment restaurant, and you notice that these agents are there, you can always, you know, shut down your store or shop for the day because of maintenance and other reasons, right? Um, I think we forget that the supply chain, the supply chain of maintaining our society does function, or only function smoothly, when we are all playing along,
Mm-hmm.
right? When we choose to uh put salt in those gears, put those sand in those gears by uh keeping up noise at the hotels where these ICE agents are at, so that the hotels are like, hey, we don't feel like dealing with this. Y'all gotta leave. Y'all gotta go somewhere else. Um uh Doing protests or sit-ins at the places where they're staging, right? They were using Target as a place where they can go and stage for raids. Um, Taking up all the parking lot spaces, you know, uh, refusing to let those agents use the bathroom in their places, which is another thing. That's petty. Do you know how petty that is? You know how you
Yeah.
know how horrifically petty that is, to be like, hey, I know that y'all. hey, y'all was saying that y'all don't want trans people to be in the bathroom. I don't know if y'all are trans or not, so y'all can't be in the bathroom. Like that is horrifically
That
petty.
is a very effective demoralizing tactic, though. It's like you need to ask
Like,
some questions about your life when it's like,
yeah,
can I go pee? No, get out.
hey, 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 you're an ICE agent, right? Well, we can't allow y'all to come use the bathroom here because some of our customers do not feel safe with you around, and some of our workers do not feel safe with you around. So please leave, right?
Yep.
That
Hmm.
that is that is deliciously petty, and I saw some of that, and I'm like, I want to thank y'all. Please keep y'all boots, keep y'all boots on. It like keep your boots on, keep them laced, and keep that work going, because
Hmm.
that's how we as American citizens can fight back against this fascism, while we get representatives, real representatives, to fight along on our behalf, right? Uh, there was this real quick story. It came across my social media feed. It's a real quick hit. And I wanted to talk about it. Is the Black History story. So a mom confronted a teacher, right? Uh, a teacher was grading a student's assignment, uh, uh, and one of the things that one of the questions was write a historical hero that means something to you, right? And the little girl wrote Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman was a hero to her.
Yeah, absolutely. Hmm.
The teacher marked it as wrong.
What?
Yeah,
Oh God.
you think I can make this up? This happened last week, and I'm like, we're gonna say Harriet Tubman. What what teacher? What what teacher is gonna say Harriet Tubman was not a hero during Black History Month? Did you not read any of the stories that she did? Are we are like freeing people from enslavement, working with the union, right? Like there's a number of things that this woman did in her lifetime that we can say is heroic, that would make her a hero. I want to understand the dysfunction of this teacher to say, hey, your answer was wrong. And shout out to the mom, and shout out to the mom of the story. We're gonna link this story into the doobly doo below. It's in our group chat.
I'm not familiar with the context of the story, but like the most charitable. I mean, obviously, like the Occam's razor. We're dealing with a racist teacher, probably, but the most charitable explanation. Do you think like could this be kind of like some teacher being overly cautious because of everything coming from the Trump administration?
No,
You're not supposed to talk about DEI or woke or blah 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 blah, blah, which.
no,
Uh, if you're in a situation where you think it's not kosher to talk about Harriet Tubman, yeah, like that's. I hope you understand. Like that. That should tell you just how like the level of authoritarian overreach that we're dealing with here.
yeah. So I wanted to talk about that as a quick hit, um, and because and I also want to tie it to our rewriting of history and the tact and it's in those moments, and I'm glad that the mom called it out, because it's in those moments where we are indoctrinating children to rewrite history, or to not take the lessons of history seriously, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Why am I bringing that up? Because the story that I did want to talk about is shout out to where is this there was a detainee an Irishman that was a detainee uh, that ended up somehow getting a cell phone and reaching out to some media organizations, and that this Irishman is in one of our modern day concentration camps, right?
Hmm.
Why do I bring this up, and why am I tying it back to history? One of the tactics that the Irishman talked about, and while he's in this detention facility, this immigration detention facility, is what uh the the ICE agents were calling a isolation box, right? They put people in, not like uh holding cells, like isolation holding cells. They're putting them basically in closets, small closets, isolated closets where the temperature gets really hot, where the temperature uh and they call them sweat boxes, right? There was a tactic during during the era of slavery where they called the hot box, where they put slaves that ran away or were disobedient. They would lock them in boxes, um, where some of them could suffocate and die. It's it's very similar if you ever saw the movie Django, when you finally see Broomhilda on the candy farm plantation where they grab her from. She was in one of those hot boxes. That was a real historical tactic that they did to enslave people, that they're doing now to people who are being detained in our modern day concentration camps. So as much as we will want to say that the tactics that ICE is using is similar to Nazis, it's also similar to slavery that we did in this country. They
Hmm.
are redoing tactics that was used on slaves to people who do not have their paperwork in order, regardless of if they did a crime or not, regardless of how you may feel about immigration or not. There's no reason on planet Earth why you should be doing things like this to other human beings.
It's interesting you bring that up because I've been reading through Black Reconstruction, the W.E.D. B. Du Bois book about Civil War, post-Civil War era. But there's something that you mentioned that just resonated, or there was in the chapter talking about just the time period right after the Civil War. Is talking about a lot of these anti-black laws that were being put in, and so there's a passage, and I can't find it like at this moment, but to paraphrase, essentially he's talking about what it would be like in a lot of these towns and communities is that if you were a black person, like everybody, Emancipation Proclamation, post Civil War, but if you did not have your work papers with you, I like the papers that pointed out, like, who which plantation you're working at or who you're working under. If you did not have like a certificate with you bearing that information out, you would be arrested for vagrancy. And sometimes you would be sent back to your boss, and sometimes you would be sent to a prison, basically like a prison plantation colony. And it is so unnerving to think about how, like, I was just reading this the other day, and that is like a one-to-one, um like you could copy and paste that between that and the situation we are with ICE, where like if you don't have your papers, and sometimes even when you do, you're going to get got and sent to one of these camps.
I mean, Doc, we've talked about how the prison system in America is very similar to slavery, right? To the actions of slavery. that we have that we were doing in this country. Sometimes, like, I don't think it's hyperbolic when we say that, when we talk about how uh, prisoners are forced to do work for multinational corporations, that if they didn't export them to other countries, they imported them to private prisons so that they don't have to pay workers an actual living wage. They can pay them $1 or $2 to do an hour for Victoria's Secret or for Walmart or for those things.
Hmm.
The punishments, though, that you're giving undocumented people or prisoners, and you're putting them in sweat boxes or hot boxes, which is cruel and unusual punishment. It was cruel and unusual punishment to do that to slaves, to enslave people. It was way beyond cruel and unusual punishment then. It is beyond the pale now. Because you can say they didn't care. You back then when it was legal to own people, you can say that you didn't care back then, or that it was passed over because people were making money and things of that nature. You can make as many excuses that you want back then. We know better now. And I say this to my nephews and nieces all the time. When you know better, you do better. There's no reason. There is no reason for the treatment that is going on in these modern day concentration camps, for the conditions to be horrific, for the ICE agents to not pay for people's health care, for the ICE agents um uh to not be having the facility clean for them. There's been stories of immigrants laying in their own feces, that there's not enough actual food. Kids are getting sick. That kids are getting sick because the food that they're being fed has maggots in it. People have died during in these camps. And the other horrifying thing that we don't talk about, some of the concentration camps that America had for indigenous people, for Japanese internment, and some of the camps that some of the land that was used for slave camps. ICE is now trying to reopen or rebuild or have um are
Yeah,
trying to.
no, and I think we touched on that a little bit last week, but yeah, they're eyeing a lot of these, you know, history may not repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme. And yeah, they're opening up a lot of those historical places that should be museums to, like, like atrocious things we never do again, but like are now trying to be repurposed for, yeah, holding undocumented people and maybe the political agitators. They've been talking about that a lot. Perhaps that's what they'll send all the people complaining about ICE on Facebook and Twitter. I saw that come from the U.S. State Department, or the DOJ said they're demanding information from Meta and Twitter and all the rest of them about people who are disparaging ICE, so that they can be punished. Which, that sounds really, by the way, that sounds really awful. And like, oh my God, they're gonna do there are not enough concentration camps or enough goons for everybody who's been ripping on ICE on social media. I think it's just this. I mean, look, make no mistake, that's a horrible threat. And it's hard for me to be scared by it, because it's like these people have no sense of how unpopular they are. Like you understand that's most of the country, right? That's been saying F ICE on Facebook. Like, you really think you can put most of the country in a can? Like, what are you gonna do? Sorry. Uh,
No, absolutely. So those two stories I wanted to make quick hits, because I wanted to make sure that we talk about. We are actively echoing and repeating some of the worst moments of our country. Some we are choosing to. We are choosing to do the worst things that our country has done to other human beings, and we're choosing to do that as policy. And that's the thing that makes the Jim Crow era, the slavery era. It is policy.
This
These are things on the
it
books.
really
These
makes
are
like this particular Black History Month is super important because Black history, you will get a lot of information and footnotes, not only about the atrocities that are being repeated today, but also how people resisted them.
yes, that yes. We we have always fought for liberation. We are consistently fighting for liberation. And there are blueprints to fight for liberation. And we should be learning those lessons as much as humanly possible. And also one other thing. I think we talked about it last week. We talked about Penn Bondi, right? In her interview. We talked about Penn Bondi, right? In her interview.
I don't know if I think that happened after our show last week. I hate to say it, but it's almost 2 o'clock, so we got to wrap it up. But
Um,
that's a whole thing, I know.
just one thing. Using the excuse. Okay, this is my last point. Using the excuse that the economy is great. This is the reason why we don't need to
The Dow was over
address,
50,000.
we don't need to we don't need to address the victims of Epstein, or we don't need to hold people who did those crimes accountable. Does not help your cause. I want
It
people.
was one of the more ridiculous things I've seen. That says a lot. Just because government's
I
been
need
ridiculous
I
for a
need
while now.
everyone who believes that you can say, "What about the economy?" Try that in any other context. I want you to try that in any other context. Hey, I just cheat. Hey, you are cheating on your spouse. But the Dow Jones though. Hey, stole that. You just stole that sandwich from that starving kid. But but the Nasdaq. You know what I'm saying?
I was just thought of that Shaggy song from the early 2000s. Like, you call
Yeah.
me on the sofa, the Dow Jones, in the camera,
Right.
the
Like,
Nasdaq.
like it is. It is. I I joke and I say that the GOP is the guardian of the pedophiles because again, the Democrats also had those files for 4 years, and our Attorney General chose not to actually go after the pedophile ring of cabal people. But the GOP, they were not fighting the allegations. They were not fighting the allegations. They were reinforcing the allegations. Like no, they are the
Mhm.
guardians of.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, with that, I think we got to wrap the show up. Lawrence, thanks again for coming on, and everybody out there for listening. Just a quick reminder: you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, and the Media Cyphers Kalamazoo podcast. You can find on most podcasting apps. All right. Until next week, everybody, keep on fighting for that revolution solution.